What's up, everybody? This is John McLeod, and welcome back to Temple Talk. Today we have an amazing, awesome guest, my man, Justin Taylor. He is a beast in the real estate spot. He is a beast up in Arkansas. He is a beast around the country, and he doesn't just do it, because he wants to be successful in life. He does it because he loves to hand out golden nuggets. And don't get it twisted. That's going to come up again later in the show. But today we want to talk to Justin about real estate and how being a believer and real estate go hand in hand, but specifically how he does it. Justin, what's going on, man? Welcome to the show.
Man, that introduction got me hype. I feel like I want to go hit the gym now.
Oh man, no. I had to hype you up because you've been doing amazing things, man. And it is one of the reasons why prompted me to reach out to you, because you seriously have you really caught my eye when I see a believer going hard for God, bold about it, but also being dominant and going hard in a specific space. And that specific space is real estate. But before we get there, Justin, tell everybody about your background and how you grew up and what brought you to God.
Man, I guess I kind of the typical, my grandfather was a preacher. So going to his church, you'd think that I took a good, easy path with him, kind of going to his church. But I guess being the preacher's grandson, kind of go through that college area where you kind of rebel and basically make all the mistakes. And I could probably go on an hour about my background, but to kind of sum it up quickly is, yeah, kind of, that trend where you go through the motions and I feel like I knew of God, but didn't really get to know him until after college. And so that's kind of my summing it up. I grew up around it, but didn't really understand it until after college. I've been out of college for probably, let's see, I guess it's been 4 years now. And so I'd say the last 4 years has definitely been my closest I've been. Before that, it was more of just the, going through the motions and, just that typical story.
So, no, I definitely hear that. And in that, we could call it typical, but everybody has a personalized version of it, right? So it's like when I hear that, I also hear that you went through some struggles. You knew about it. It's one thing to know about it, but you went through some life struggles that caused you to get into it and get to God more. Can you dive into what some of those things were that pulled you closer to God?
Man, I actually, I guess looking back on it, I was listening to my man E.T. Thomas,
Eric
Eric Thomas,
Thomas. Yeah.
yeah, and he talked about it's not the struggles in life that break you. What breaks you is not knowing that you can get broken. And so that was kind of what happened to me, was kind of like Eric Thomas said, it's not those things that broke you. It's not knowing you could get broke. And so I think that's kind of what happened to me, was just kind of living up on a mountain thinking I'm dominant. And in all reality, I went through a harsh breakup and I was like, wait, I can get broken. And I definitely wasn't living with God in the center. And so it just kind of hit me all at once, where it was like, crap, I wasn't ready for this. And so it was, I guess that was a turning point where it was like I can't promise I won't ever be broken again. Like I might not ever go through I'm definitely going to go through some hard times, but at least this time I'll be prepared.
See, I love that, because in that is the notion that, with Psalms 37, or I believe it's 34, when it says, many are the afflictions of the righteous, but out of them all God will deliver. He always delivers us. And the beautiful thing about it is, you did what a lot of people don't do. I said, instead of running from it, you ran in the direction to get better, get closer to God. And now you are thoroughly flourishing on so many different levels. So now when we're at the point now where, you're out of college, you go through some troubles, but now you're closer to God, and you use that to level up. Can you talk to me? Let's go into when you got into to the real estate space, and how did that happen?
Uh, Definitely a God thing, because my undergrad is basically it's a degree that allows me to go to PT school, any type of something in the med field. And so I was living in central Louisiana. I moved up to northeast Arkansas with the intention of going to physical therapy school. And so I had one more class I was having to finish up. I was, going through trying to get my GRE to study for grad school. And I met a guy he was flipping about 10 houses a year, and he had about 40 rental properties. And about that time, I had reached out to him because I was also about halfway through college, read the Rich Dad Poor Dad book. Anybody that reads that, it's just going to open their eyes on finance, literacy, and stuff like that.
That's right.
And so it's already been on my mind for 3 or 4 years. And so when I graduated, I was kind of at this turning point of like, I can spend the next 3 years pursuing PT school, or I can spend the next 3 years pursuing real estate. And I was on the fence of which one. But then when I met this guy, he had joined a mastermind group that you basically pay them a lot of money to tell you how to do real estate. And he was like, hey, I don't have, because at the time he was running 4 other businesses too. So at the time he was like, I don't have time to do this. He goes, if I pay for this mastermind group, can you dive deep into it and basically run the company? And I was like, well, heck yeah. So dove deep into it, basically built his real estate company. We're approaching triple the size right now. We're by the end of this year, we'll have close to almost 100 doors if we hit our goals correctly. And he was doing, like I said, that 6-7 flips. And now at the end of this year, we'll say, since I've been with them, we're towards the mid 60s on how many flips we've done. We're trying to get to that 100 flips a year, but I guess long story short is kind of backtracking is I moved up here with the intention to go to PT school, and I met that guy who basically poured into me and taught me real estate. And it was kind of a cool story because I had called some random property management firm. I was like, hey, do you work with any investors that I can get their number? And just because I was desperate to learn, I wanted to know something. And I called some random property management firm. They were like, hey, we can't give away their numbers. That's kind of personal. They were like, but we do work with this one real estate agent that you can maybe ask them some questions. And so it's cool. Out of all the people I called, he was the only person I called. And right before I called him, I just remember praying. I was like, God, I don't have a clue what I want to do. What's my next step? Yeah. And it was just a blessing that God kind of connected me to him. And so that was definitely a God thing. And just the last 3.5 years, I've been building his company, and I've recently started trying to basically do the same thing for myself. I've kind of like proven to myself, like, hey, I can build this company. Now I'm going to start building my own portfolio. And I've got deals in 3 different states for myself at the moment. But I'm kind of, slowly starting to build my own portfolio now. But
that is incredible. Oh my goodness. I have to unpack a couple of stuff, man, because you just leveled up on the audience like 4 or 5 times. First of all, let's go back quickly. What is PT? What were you going to school for? Is that,
That's your doctorate of physical therapy.
Okay. I wanted to make sure, just in case it didn't mean anything else. So now you were going to school for PT, and you're going to get a job basically to use your degree in physical therapy, and you found real estate. And you said, you know what? Like, you fell in love. Is that moment where you fell in love, like, you know what? I could do this, or I like this. And you had to make that decision. Now, you transitioned from PT into real estate, and you said, God, you told God, you acknowledged God and what you wanted to do. In all their ways, acknowledge him and he will direct your path. You acknowledged God and what you wanted to do, and then you took action. It is that very notion that a lot of people do. They acknowledge God and wait. They ask God for it, and then they stay still.
Oh, exactly.
And then when he doesn't do it, they get upset. But you did something beautiful.
I love my favorite line that hit me hard. Yeah, my favorite line that really convicted me is is some people use prayer to procrastinate. Like they they pray for it but won't take action, and they don't realize if you're going to pray for it, it's the same thing as like driving a car. Like God kind of gives you the power, like the engine, to do it, but you still got to put your foot down and steer and guide it. And you kind of like, this is my favorite example. It's Pastor TD Jakes that maybe said this. The same thing as a wooden bench. Like man made the wooden bench, but God provided the trees, like the resources. So like the same way, like you just said, like you got to actually take action. Like I guess, for example, with me was I was praying for like, how do I start? But I still had to pick up the phone and I still had to go hustle to find that guy. But no, that's exactly right. Is just, you got to be careful that you're not using prayer to procrastinate, because if you start praying but not taking action, it doesn't work like that.
No, you hit it right on the head. So let me repeat it again for you old folks. You can't use prayer to procrastinate. You cannot do it. If you want to change your life and you've been praying to God about something, this is not the place where you use it to procrastinate. Don't pray and wait. Pray and work. Don't pray and wait. Pray and work. And that's exactly what Justin was doing and building, helping build that amazing company. Now, Justin, you get the knowledge. And this, like, first of all, let me just go back to the fact that you found somebody that is willing to work with you. They said yes after a conversation, and then they paid for you to go to a mastermind that very few people get to do, and you learned the knowledge. So now that you learned the knowledge, what was that next step after that? Like, you kind of went into it, but can you give us a little bit more insight as when after you acquired the knowledge and you went back to him and say, you learned this, this, and this, how are you able to help his company level up?
Man, I went, I guess I'm gonna kind of ramble, but I went through this phase where I was saying, like, I'm gonna read every single book possible. Those gurus are like, read 5 books a month. I probably read every book out there. I've got a bookshelf of just any book that you can think of that you're going to see on what's the, quote unquote popular to book. I went out there and got it. And it's the same things at mastermind group. The mastermind group, I mean, most of the stuff in there, I probably already read in a book, but they just kind of pieced it together, and being around those guys gave me the confidence to take action. But I love this topic because I caught myself after diving deep into that mastermind group. I was like, hey, because these guys are actually doing 100 deals a year. And I caught myself. I was like, I came across this knowledge, and it was probably 8 months before I got my first deal, even though I had that knowledge. And I just kind of caught myself. I was like, what am I doing here? And I guess what really, like you said, to level up the company was I had to take a step back and just, so there's a saying that says, those who chase 2 rabbits won't catch either. And so, like, I had this buttload of information where I'm learning all this stuff, and I just had to take a step back and realize I'm learning too much. And I just kept it simple. I was like, what's most important right now? And I started putting together, like, basically, like, what's my most important step right now? Because I just got caught up kind of like spinning my wheels where I was just doing a lot of busy work. I wasn't really being proactive. Like, that's a whole nother rabbit hole I can go down on how to be productive versus busy. But it's just, I caught myself like diving into that information, and I wasn't taking action. I was like getting this high off of learning. Like, I was like getting this dopamine high where I was like, this feels good to learn. And 8 months had passed, and I was like, but I'm not actually taking action. And so the long story short is you don't, if you're out there like seeking all that knowledge, there's a certain level where you just got to quit learning and start taking action. And that's where we really shot up, because I had gone through all the content. I was like, I don't know what else to learn. And it just kind of hit me. It was like, why am I not taking action? And so I guess it was just that's like, just just take action. You don't need to learn all, like looking back on it, I wish I would have taken action quicker. And that, so
No,
that was
yeah.
just kind of that was the biggest part.
No, I hear exactly what you're saying. So, and just to go back to everybody else that's following with us, he acquired a lot of information. And for those who think that this is unattainable or this is too much and it's impossible or all those things, did you hear what he just said? He came to the realization that he had a lot of information, but then he started to narrow his focus in order to be successful. So the key to being successful in real estate, the key to being successful in life, period, is to narrow your focus. Focus on something that you really like about it. And it can't just be about the learning, because you'll be sucking that learning high for an exponential amount of time, and that leads you to nowhere. And figure out, how can I take action today? Is it building a list? Is it following? Is it talking to a realtor like Justin did? Is it finding a mentor that will invest in you after he or she sees your passion for it? So those are the things that I want everybody to make sure that they understand and see, is that he took action when he figured out, you know what, I like this lane, figure it out. That's how you break it down into steps and then achieve it. Achieve one thing at a time. And it is that, hey, I like this aspect, I'm going to go hard at this aspect. If it's rentals, if it's flips, if it's wholesaling, all of those things, Google them if you don't know what we're talking about. But it's so simple and straightforward. Now, Justin, let's go into, you said at some point you were working with him and you realized that, you know what, I can do this. I can do this. And talk to me, like, how did you start? You said you have 3 different bills in 3 states. What states are those, and why did you what made you push into doing your own thing now?
So I do primarily wholesaling in Savannah, Georgia. Central Louisiana is where I grew up, and I still got family back there. So obviously I'm gonna go back there because I know that city. So I try to do a little bit of flipping over there. And then here in Jonesboro, Arkansas is where I'm currently living. So that's the 3rd city. And I do whatever I can I'm also a licensed realtor. So really where I'm living, just kind of anything I can get my hands on here, whether it be a wholesaling, flipping, rental, or there's just the listing. But as far as the other states, I'm a little more focused and niched. Like you said, just trying to stay focused on one thing, because it's a whole different ball game, wholesaling versus flipping. It's a lot easier to flip in Central Louisiana because I have people there I trust, whereas in wholesaling, it's a little bit easier to do without any trust. So, and then I'm here in Jonesboro, so I can go walk the properties myself. So I just kind of try to get my hands on anything. So those are the 3 states I'm in. But like you said, what kind of caused me to take action for myself was I guess from a materialistic way, I was just picking up so many $20,000-$30,000 checks and handing them over to my mentor. And I was doing all the work from A to Z, where it was like, hey, I'm doing all this work. And so I was just kind of wanting to take a step back, like just kind of wanting to really go chase that financial freedom for myself. And I think I'd kind of hit this roadblock where I felt like I plateaued. I was like, hey, we're doing 5-6 deals a month with this, and I want to get to that 100 deals a year, and I need to build a team around myself to do that. So I guess just constantly just as I kind of learned the business, I just saw how realistic it was, where I was like, hey, I can continue working for him, and as I get more deals for myself, I can continue branching out and eventually just have a team under me. And I guess long story short is just I just saw how realistic it was, so I was like, it's time to take action.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There comes a point when you start to realize your level of greatness that God has put inside you. You have to, at some point, tap into it, because that is the true purpose of why he has us here. It's to tap into the purpose that he has for us. And you're saying when you found it, and it hit you, you went at it full force. Saints, I want everybody listening to this and listening to Justin right now to understand, if you feel something in your spirit, something deep down that's telling you to go in a direction, and you prayed about it and you're looking for confirmation, the confirmation is now, is here. Here it is. Do it. Follow your heart, follow what God is telling you to do, and go after your dreams. This is not a space or a time to be complacent. This is the only time you have right now is to take massive action, one step at a time. If you're worried about failure, forget about it. Now, don't even consider it, because guess what? It's going to happen. But if you don't get it, then you can't deal with or handle success. Speaking of failure, Justin, talk to us about the failures that you've gone through, because those are where your true learnings came from, correct?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, where we really took action was when we really bought into the concept that the only way we're going to grow faster is if we fail faster. I mean, it's that simple. I can talk for hours about all our failures, but I mean, just imagine a graph where like you're sitting here in the middle and you've got failure on one side and success on the other side. That's actually not right. It's you're over here and then you've got failure and success. I mean, it's failure is a part of success. It's not the opposite of success. And when you really buy into that concept, it wakes you up and it just makes you realize like, crap, I'm not failing fast enough. I mean, it's just that simple. I mean, I love the quote where it says most experts have failed more than you've even tried. Like when you truly understand that concept, it
Oh,
just
yeah.
it just opens up your mind. Like to me, when I fail, like my mentor, I mean, we've made tons of failures. And when we sit down to talk about it, our question is, okay, how can we learn from this? And then it always helps us do more. It's just a learning. It's just part of it.
So now let's get to give us a story about one of the biggest ones that you know what you learned the most from.
I'm sorry, it kind of cut out.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's Give us a story about one of the biggest failures that you learned the most from, or one of your most notable ones that you'll never forget.
For me, my failure was a time management thing. I can go into the detail of like a flip, like making a mistake where we lost money. I can go into detail of that. But for me, my biggest, I really want to hone in on like the time management part, because I would find myself getting overwhelmed where I would look at all my stuff I have to do, and I would just end up getting to the point where I just wouldn't do anything at all. And so I just finally got to the point where I was like, you know what? I'm going to write down everything and I'm just going to categorize it where I put in the top 3 things that are most important and just start doing it. And I'm just not going to worry about the rest. I'm just going to do 3 things today. And eventually when I had that mentality of, because like I guess to me, the reason that was my failure was I wasn't taking action to do anything because I was too scared to fail. Because I was like, for me, I guess something specific is like, I'm not making enough offers. Like in order for me to close deals, I need to make offers, but I wasn't making offers because I was so scared to fail. And so when I really understood that, I was like, you know what? I don't care if I fail at like, I might miss an opportunity, but at least I'm going to make the offers. And so for me, that was my biggest failure, is not understanding that I just needed to just do it. I just really needed to focus on that input, not the output. And what I mean by that is the input is something you can control. You can't really control the output. So for me, I could control, hey, I can make 50 phone calls. The output might be, okay, maybe one of those phone calls is going to be a deal. I can't really control that, but the more input, I'll get better. And so for me, that was my biggest failure, is just not understanding that concept sooner. I mean, as far now, that's more of a personal like growth thing. I can go into detail of maybe a flip. I mean, we've lost money on stuff because it was just as simple as not double checking everything. I mean, we bought a property where there was severe termite issue and ended up being $25,000 more than what we thought.
Wow.
But that like I said, that's a whole nother conversation of if you want some technical details. I mean, we've made mistakes with that, but that, like, for example, we made that mistake and we're like, hey, how can we not let that happen again? Because we get so busy, we might have 20 properties up on the whiteboard where they're all pinned. It's so easy to just kind of look over one and realize like, hey, we never had a termite clearance. So we came up with a little system on how to just, it's as simple as getting an Excel sheet. We put a little checkbox like, okay, did we do all this? But like I said, I can go through some technical failures, but for me, I'd really go on just that time management where I was like looking at everything I was doing and just not taking action because it was overwhelming me. And I just had to kind of step past that insecurity of like, well, what if I get on the phone, or what if I go make those offers and I get told no? For me, I've got 2 cold callers that work for me, and I actually reward them for no. Like I just tell them like, hey, I don't care how many deals you close. I just want you to get to 1,000 no's, because statistically speaking, you're going to get about 10 to 15 deals off of those 1,000 no's, and they're closing deals left and right, like with that mentality. Like they have fun going for the no, and so like they're sitting there hustling. And before you know it, they're at 1,000 no's and they've got 10 contracts locked up. And it's just a cool mentality. Because like for me personally, it took me almost 2 years to confidently get on the phone. And now when I've got 2 cold callers, they're excited to go for no. And so it's just kind of cool to realize that and help teach other people that concept sooner, because that, like, when I have people come work with me, that's the first thing I tell them is like, just don't worry about that output. Just put that input in and go for it, because you're going to do like me and fail miserably at being productive. And so that was just kind of my mind on it.
No, I love that, because you flip the mentality around, and therefore you change the perspective. I've often said this to several people, family, friends, anybody that will listen. When you start to dive into and live by God's perspective of how he views you, I know that, Jeremiah, I know the thoughts that I think towards you, thoughts of prosperity, of peace, of an expected end. When you start to think of that elevated mind, you think it that way, life starts to change. And that's the beautiful part of what you're explaining. Now let's go into some problem-solving mode for the beginner. And they have a problem. They're saying, well, my credit is bad. What should you do? How can you get into this if you have bad credit? What is the solution for that? And then we're good. And before you get there, so I'm going to line it up. So the 3 problems are: I have bad credit, I don't have any money, and I don't know what I'm doing. How do you start? Let's start off with bad credit. How do you get into this if you have bad credit?
Man, so speaking of bad credit, my very first deal I had horrible credit and $0, but I bought a duplex with none of my own money, and the loan wasn't in my name. I can go into the details of that. I did what was called house hacking, where I lived in one side and rented out the other side. And I did that with bad credit. And I was at a phase in my life when I did that first deal, constantly checking my bank account, like, do I have enough money to put gas in my car? Like, that's where I was at financially 3 years ago. And I still bought a duplex. And the way I did that was, my sister was on a salary. She's a manager at a restaurant. And I was like, because I'd read all these books. I knew what house hacking was. I knew how to analyze a deal. And so that was step 1, is just learning how to do it. So then step 2 was I told my sister, I was like, hey, can you go to the bank? Can we partner on this deal? I just need you to hold the loan. You won't put any of your own money into it. She said, okay. She trusted me. Thank God. And then my buddy was finishing up grad school and master's school, and he had a couple more semesters. I was like, hey, can you please max out your student loan? I need about $7,000 to put down on this property. And so he did. And it took me about 12 months to pay him back, but I paid him back every penny. And during that 12 months, I had a tenant renting out the front. I didn't have to pay a note. So I immediately got rid of that expense. So that's always step 1, is don't worry about making more money. Just worry about lowering your expenses first. Like, how many subscriptions do you have? Like, how much are you eating out? Do you need to meal prep? And so that's what I did. I got rid of the biggest expense, which was rent. I mean, rent is crazy right now. So for 12 months, the only thing I had to pay back was my buddy. So I was waiting tables, and I was also that was when I first met the mentor, where I was, like I said, it took 8 months to get my first deal. So during that 12 months, I was all in trying to learn how to get another deal, trying to pay him back. But it was a whole lot easier to not have to worry about rent because the tenant up front was paying for it. And so for me, there's so many different ways to do it, but personally, that was just how I did it. Like I said, my sister held the loan and I got my buddy. I was like, can you please max out and I'll pay you back? And they trusted me and I paid them back. And it's 3.5 years later. And I've got married 2 months ago. So I'm living in a different house, but my sister's still benefiting from that duplex because she's living in one side of it right now and renting out the other side. So she's living rent free and she's talking about wanting to buy another duplex because so it's just kind of cool because she had no clue. Just to kind of give you an idea of how close me and my sister are, we we were at the title company signing to buy the duplex, and she'd actually never seen the duplex. And when we were signing
Wow.
the paperwork, she said that to the guy that was at the title company, and he kind of stepped back. He was like, "Wait, you've never seen this, and you're buying it?" And she just kind of looked up and giggled. She goes, "I trust Justin." And so that's another story too. Is just where she just trusted me because she saw me for that previous 12 months hustling. Like she knew I knew what I was doing. And so I'm not telling you that story to just go. I'm not saying go beg people for help. Just if you're going to ask them, you need to prove to them that they can trust you.
That is awesome. See, you just made a faraway dream for some people. You just made it a reality. What was the solution? So if you have bad credit, recap. If you have bad credit, you can get somebody with good credit to get the loan. Then when it's time for you because your name is still on the house, correct?
I'm sorry, it cut out. What was that?
I said your name is still on the deed, correct?
Yes, and my name, it's what's called a quit claim deed. So you go to the title company, pay them like $150 and they put your name on the deed. So my name's on the deed and I can claim it as an asset. And I've put all the money into it myself and I've still kept my promise to my sister. She hadn't had to put any money into it.
See, now look at that. His sister fronted the loan. She put her name down. She trusted him because he was hustling. He was researching. He was doing everything he possibly could. Remember, he had bad credit at the time. So if you have bad credit, this is for you. And he found somebody to get on the loan. After he found somebody to get a loan, he still had closing costs. So he reached out to a buddy and said, "Hey, look, if you max out your student loan, I promise you I'll pay you every penny back." And guess what he did? He did whatever he had to pay that person back. Now, he not only locked in that trust with his buddy to know that, all right, he's reliable. I can trust him. I gave him a big chunk of money and he came through. He also created another believer in his sister, a believer in the system. She saw like, okay, he hustled, he works hard. She didn't even see the house, but trusted him. And now he went from that, never put his name on the house, but he quit claim deed. You heard what that is. And now his deed is on the house and he is a part owner of a property. He was already in it. And then he got closing costs. And none of the money was his and he still paid it back over time. So he's now in a house, in a place where he just started ownership. He took action and he's there with ownership without even having the perfect credit score or the money to do it. Now let's go into problem number 2. It's I don't have the money, which you kind of just solved. You kind of just went into it a little bit. But for those, what are some resources for people that don't have the money? Their credit may be great, but they may be skeptical about loans and things. If they don't have the money, what should people do?
If you don't have the money, I mean, you can go to the bookstore for $20 and buy a book. I mean, Rich Dad Poor Dad was like $14. So I anybody can come up with $14. So just start buying those books like that and start educating yourself financially. I mean, you've got The Richest Man in Babylon, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I mean, those are two really good financial books. And so if you don't have the money, you need to start learning about the money. I mean, that's what Rich Dad, Poor Dad goes into is that's like not having money isn't the issue. What the issue is not being financially literate, like not understanding financial terms.
That's
And
right.
so if you don't have the money, I would highly recommend go getting those two books and reading them because getting money isn't going to solve the problem. What Rich Dad Poor Dad talks about is being broke isn't about the number in your bank. Being broke is about the knowledge you have about money. Because if I handed you $100,000 and you had a broke mindset, you'd go broke again. Whereas if you handed me $100,000, I know how to put it back into real estate and I'm going to turn it into $1 million. For me, not having, like I said, not having money is not about the number in your bank. It's about the knowledge you have about how to make money. So that would be my first step is just start educating yourself on it, because as you educate yourself on it, that's why my mentor trusted me to just go build his company, because he always tells me the first lunch we grabbed together, he just told me he was amazed at the words I was spitting out. Like I was a walking thesaurus. He always calls me a walking thesaurus because I was just educating myself. I had no money, and he was like, "Hey, I'm going to fund this business. I'm going to pay for this mastermind group, and I want you to go build it for me." So, and we've built it, and like I said, we're consistently doing that 3 to 5 deals a month. And I did all that without ever touching any of my own money. It was the only money I touched was reading those books, and so I would just highly recommend starting there on like, where's your financial literacy?
That's a powerful, powerful resource. Where is your financial literacy? Saints, if you want this thing bad enough, ask yourself the tough questions. Do I know enough? Am I prepared to receive what I'm asking God for? Now we're talking about real estate, but that's a life thing too. That's a spiritual thing too. Are you prepared for what you prayed for? Can you
Oh
really
yeah, that
receive? Yeah, can you really receive what you're asking God for? And what Justin is saying today is, hey, educate yourself so that you can reshape what you think about the thing you want, because it's not really that far off. It's only far off because you don't know enough. It's only in the distance because you don't know how to close the gap. It's the information that helps you close the gap. But that's 50% of the way. The other 50% is taking the action from the information. So we just solved 3 of the major problems. If you have bad credit, he told you what he did. If you don't have money, you need to reshape how you got money or some other resources. If you understand how to manage it, maybe it's private money. Maybe it's talking to a lender, or maybe you educate yourself on how loans work and talk to a mortgage lender. And then you start to understand that, okay, I don't have to have a whole bunch of money. I just need to understand how the money works. Because once you understand how the money works, then everything else is golden. Finally, Justin, before we get out of here, man, I want you to talk to us about the Golden Nugget podcast.
man, the Gold Nugget podcast all falls back to, like, you asked me what my biggest failure was, and I had told you I gained all this knowledge, but I was not being productive. And so for me, I was like, how can I share that? And so I wanted a podcast that can, when you're done listening to it, like, what are 2 or 3 gold nuggets that you can actually implement? I guess my elevator pitch is, I don't want to just inspire you. I want to give you gold nuggets that you can actually implement. And so I've been interviewing and talking to these guys that it's kind of a business focused podcast. I'm in the real estate world, so it's a little more heavier on the real estate business guys, but I try to focus it on the business side. And I try to get them to always give 2 or 3 tangible gold nuggets that you can actually implement. Because I ran into that, like I told you, where I was listening to 3-4 hours of podcast a day, and I would get super motivated. And then I would go sit home and I'm like, well, what do I do? And so I was just trying to niche out a podcast that gets you motivated, but you can have 2 or 3 gold nuggets where you're like, hey, I'm going to actually implement this. And for me, just giving you a summary of the last few episodes is a couple good gold nuggets is just like I had mentioned earlier, is like, if you ever catch yourself so busy with so much to do, just simply write everything down and then prioritize it, where you're only looking at the top 3 things and just knock out those 3 things. And then the next day, reprioritize and then knock out those 3 things. Like, those are the type of gold nuggets. And the thing is, like, I want these gold nuggets to come from these guest speakers. The guest speakers, like I said, they're running super successful businesses. And so I guess just like I said, my elevator pitch is like, I wanted to give a couple gold nuggets each episode that you can actually implement. And yeah, it's like the typical podcast where you can hear their story. There's a couple guys, like there's one guy, he talks about how he's revenuing $150,000 a month. There's one guy that talks about he was on pace to do a deal in every single state in the United States. He's doing a large amount of wholesaling. And then there's just guys like that. I mean, there's another guy he's only 32, 33, and he's got over 750 rental properties. And so it's just guys like that where I want them to be given the gold nuggets. Like, what gold nuggets, like, how did you get to that level? Because like you, when I told my story of buying my first duplex, you said, you had talked about how I narrowed that gap, how I made it more realistic. And so I want to take these people. That's actually another story, is I almost named the podcast The Bridge, because I wanted to bridge the gap from the unsuccessful to the successful.
Wow. Yeah.
That was almost what I named it, because that's, in a sense, that's exactly what I was wanting to do. Is I wanted to take these people who are like, I feel like the world looks at them like celebrities, like, I can never do what they're doing. But if you just sit down and have a conversation with them, you realize they're the same people. You just need to hear from them a couple gold nuggets that you can implement.
No, I love that, man. I love that. So make sure you go check out the Gold Nugget podcast wherever you find your podcast. I believe Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Search for it, find it, listen to it. He has some amazing people. Justin, I want to thank you so much for being on Temple Talk, man, because you blessed us with so much. And I really, really, really appreciate how you continue to just educate the people, how you continue to live your life on purpose, the way God intended it, on that higher level of prosperity, the way God intended us to live, man. And I can't thank you enough. Before we get out of here, is there anything else you want to say?
Man, my biggest thing is, if you're going to pray God-sized prayers, you better be able to handle the workload.
Woo! Hold up. Sound the horns off on that one. If you're going to pray God-sized prayers, you better be ready to handle the workload. On that note, I'm John McLeod. I appreciate everybody tuning in to Temple Talk. We are back, and every time we get a guest, we will be right here live on YouTube. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and share, because my man Justin is dropping so many gold nuggets, and he dropped them in this show today, and I appreciate every single one of you. Continue and be blessed.